Welcome again to another edition of so we're gonna read through Animal Man again. This is gonna be issue 26. We just finished issue 25, and as you all can see, this one is dated July and this one is dated August. This is a monthly magazine, as most comic books are. 24, as you know, is a month has 12 a year has 12 months. So this started out, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about why Animal Man is important to me. Several reasons, or at least two, I should say. Well, there's also Grant Morrison, but we'll get to that later when we start the comic. We'll be starting with the advertisements first, actually. All right, so here's the thing. This comic actually started out in 1988, September, which is also the exact month that I was born in. And, September is not an uncommon month for births. It is exactly 9 months after the week of Christmas and New Year's. Yeah, the last week of December, first week of January. So September is actually, an obstetrician's chart would tell you that a lot of babies are born in September. Still, this comic came out the same month that I was born in, the same year, and I'm pretty stoked about that. Also, I think another thing that really speaks to me about this comic is, the social justice part of it. You really want to be you want to be one person, but then everything about your life actually says something else. You're still drinking Starbucks and flipping off that styrofoam cup. But yeah, you kind of want to fight for the things that are going on in the world as well. And hey, at least in this comic book, this person is doing it. So as you can see, the story was written by Morrison, and the team also includes Trog and Farmer. You're going to see why that's important when we start. But before we get into all of the rest, let me just so this is a continuation of my previous video on Animal Man 25. We've already done two YouTube videos on this comic, as well as several videos on Justice League of Europe, where Animal Man is making appearances. Ooh, look at his butt. And so Animal Man is appearing in Justice League of Europe, as well as his own comic book. Now, not a lot of people can say that because, they don't all have their own comic book going on at the same time. But, all right, so another cool thing about reading old comics is we get to see these advertisements. And look at these guys. They're not as popular as the rest of, these guys are called Hawk and Dove, and I don't even think that this is actually Hawk and Dove, because Hawk and Dove, several people have taken on the mantle of Hawk and Dove. At one point, it was a pair of twin brothers called Hank and Don. Hank was a wrestler, and Don was kind of a nerd, I guess. One was soft-spoken, and one was red and aggressive and, tough and big build. Later, they changed Dove to a girl, and I think the girl dies as well. So there's a few pairing ups in comics, especially when it comes to, also there's RoboCop. There's also a mention in the series Animal Man about Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, and this is something else I wanted to point out: Fire and Ice. They are also part of Justice League, and ICE actually has connections to Guy Gardner as well. So without further ado, we're going to go into the comic book. So little catching up on what has been going on so far. In the last issue, Animal Man went through limbo. Comic book limbo is where, after the crisis, they had to get rid of a lot of unnecessary characters and rebuild everything from the ground up. So, you got the mythology inside the comic book world and, the publishing world and the real world that, so every comic book and every comic book character has two types of histories. You have the publication history and you have the story that goes inside the book. Grant Morrison is actually, so this is where the author of the book or the writer of the book, you can't call him author because these aren't his own characters. But yeah, the writer is, the reason that Animal Man is going through comic book limbo is because the monkey was dying. You'll understand what that is if you click on the links to the other videos, which, okay, I never share the links. You could go to my channel, or for this one in the descriptions, I am definitely gonna stick the other links in there because none of this is gonna make sense without a little bit of reading up on that. So yeah, I'll post the link to the last video. It's what I tell my students as well. So anyways, so his family is dead. His wife and 2 kids, they were murdered. And at first he tried traveling back through time to try stop that. Somehow he ended up doing this, going into the... So he realized, this guy in one of the episodes, he could travel out of the panel borders. He would be inside the panel and suddenly he would be outside the panels. That happened 2 issues ago, and the whole series has been, self-awakening, and it's been pretty interesting. So here we are. I'm the evil mastermind behind the scenes. I'm the wicked puppeteer who pulls the strings and makes you dance. I'm a writer. So Grant Morrison talks about how we are playing God with this 2-dimensional world that we have control over, and how all these tragedies that happen to the character, we make them go through tragedies for character development and all this other stuff. You're telling me you've been behind all this? Did you create your yellow aliens? Well, I didn't create the yellow aliens, but I did rescue them from obscurity and put them to work for me. What he's saying is he's using characters that other people have used, but he chooses to use all these B-list characters that got into Justice League Europe, for example. Who's in Justice League Europe? Captain Atom is in Justice League Europe. Power Girl, the Supergirl of Earth 2 who ended up on Earth 1, big confusion. She is in Justice League Europe. The Flash, the second Flash, is in Justice League Europe. He's a big character, but not Barry Allen, Wally West. And then we got Metamorpho, who was in The Outsiders. We also have Dr. Light, Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Fire and Ice, and a Russian dude called Dimitri. I think his superhero name is Red Rocket Red. Then we got a French girl called Scarlet. The Fox, the Scarlet Fox, the Crimson Fox. I think she was called the Crimson Fox. Very obscure characters, because when it comes to, Ralph Dibny is another famous character, but when it comes to Crimson Fox and Dr. Light II, Chemio, who played a big part in the crisis nonetheless. Nobody knows much about these characters. Alright, so here we go. Someone else creates you to be perfect and innocent, and I step in and spoil everything. It's pretty awesome. Tight close up on Animal Man, concentrating on one eye. The eye is narrow. You don't control me. No, no. Something like that happens in the last issue as well, where, the script tells you exactly what he's supposed to do, and it's all predestination and stuff, and he's like, no, I'm gonna resist. Because saying no to because not doing something is also a choice, but he doesn't have a choice. He takes the scissors and cuts something. Alright, so no, control me now, damn you. Okay, so they have this fight, and we still haven't come to the interesting part. But yeah, all of this that he thought he did. He thought he killed the writer, but there he is, because, he lives in a different dimension. Like, we live in the 3-dimensional dimension, or somewhere between the third and fourth. And this was actually, this is high water on the panels. So it's Columbus Day apparently. So yeah, that makes sense to talk about high water here. This is from a recent comic that, actually I can't remember which comic this was. Yeah, so Grant Morrison shows him that he exists in a comic book, and, it's all surprises to him. Of course I know I wrote your grief and rage. It added drama. So he's been playing around with Animal Man's life just for entertainment, but it's not fair. No, it's not. One of my cats died last year. Maybe a bone punctured her lung, but yeah, her name was Jermara. That wasn't fair either, but who do I complain to? That's pretty bleak, but it's not Alan Moore, at least. He talks about butterflies dying in one of the other ones as well, and he's like, the butterfly never existed. And Animal Man's like, why did you have to do that? Like, just to prove a point. Simpler. There's no problem that can be solved by some idiot in tights. But he's not like other superheroes. In one comic, in the one where the Clock King comes, he is actually the most passive member of the Justice League Europe. He decides not to fight. There's a big deal about that. You can read up if you find that comic. You live in a world created by committee. Someone else writes your life when you're with the Justice League. Yeah, so in Justice League Europe, in the other magazine, Animal Man is just a character. And in this one, it's like, it's all about this dude and his awakening. So the character is written in very different ways in the two comic books that are being published at the same time. And, not everybody in Justice League of Europe has their own comic. Okay, Flash has his own comic, and maybe someone else would have their own comic. If you're really popular, you get comics coming out bi-weekly, as they call it. That's twice a month. You don't really have a lot of weekly comics. You have monthly, and some actually come twice a month. Some come once in 2 months, different frequencies. And if you're Superman, you have 4 comic books happening at the same time. You got Action, you got New Adventures of Superman, that's from the cartoon actually, and you also have Man of Steel and Superman, Adventures of Superman. If you're Batman, you got Detective, you got Batman, you got Legends of Dark Knight, you got several titles coming out at the same time. So they're just gonna go for a stroll. And they talk about, but there's not enough space in your world. Things have to be canoious. I know, of course, you're real. We wouldn't be here if you weren't real. You existed long before I wrote about you, and if you're lucky, you'll still be young when I'm old or dead. Yeah, like basically what he's saying is before the crisis, there was a different version of him that existed, and then there's ripples. Anyway, if you want superheroes, I can give you superheroes. Look, it just creates them out of nowhere, out of thin air, ink, and then they die. How about that? Will the excitement never end? My God, what have you done to all those people? They're not part of the story. Yeah, they're like, extras. My life, you mean? Oh, look at that, tiny mushroom guys and dinosaurs. Listen, where I come from, we expect real stories. I'm getting sick of these pseudo-existential narratives. Then we talk about the team here as well. They might play it safe and write you as a straight action superhero who fights animal-inspired villains every issue. They might do the obvious and go for shock by turning you into a meat eater. I don't know. How can they make me eat meat? I don't eat meat. I don't want to eat meat. I'm a vegetarian. No, I'm a vegetarian. You'll be whatever you're written to be. A generic comic book hero with blonde hair and good teeth, 100s. It's kind of sad when you write there. I mean, when you make it an equation and make it all mathematics like that, you're just a number. You're not that special. But then, are we? No, I must be more than that. I feel things. I care about things. You can't take that away from me. You care about animals because I wanted to use you to draw people's attention to what's happening in the world, my world, the real world. We actually talk about very current things that are going on, racism in South Africa, police brutality, the whales in Fresco Islands, many things. Yeah. It's not a joke. What am I supposed to do? This is getting boring. Too much talk. Time for a fight scene, I think. And so suddenly there's a fight. So anyway, I thought this guy might make for an interesting. So this is like the opposite of Animal Man. Animal Man is like, very passive and hairless and slim, and he fights for the animals. And then there's this Craven the Hunter or saber-tooth looking guy. He just talks about some others had the brilliant idea of matching you against your ideological opposite. He could call him Slaughterhouse. Torture animals, and he thrives on burgers. He probably drives a Hummer, loves the oil industry. Alright guys, I think I'm gonna have to call this, we're gonna have to end the video, I think, we also talk about, the rest of the team. Doug Hazelwood is the inker, he's very famous, and Karen Berger, they say that the comic wouldn't exist because, all that. So that's his, so like I told you on the cover itself, it's a straw again farmer, but Doug Hazelwood was doing the same job several issues ago. And then he mentions all the other dudes that, Tom Grummett is the same person who did art on, think a lot of Superman stories as well, and definitely Superboy after he goes to Hawaii. A lot of Tim Drake, I think, and Tom Lyle was the first person to do Tim Drake, but along with Chuck Dixon, it was either Hazelwood or Rubenstein, I think, as on inks, and on pencils it was Tom Grummett. Tom Grummett is probably my third favorite from the 90s, along with Dan Jurgens' art and Todd Nauck's. PETA, People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, and the Washington D.C. That's not the. So yeah, he just talks about, like, his life here. That's about it, actually. If you find this comic, you should really read it. It's Animal Man 26 and 25. Thank you all for sharing with me.